Thanks everyone for joining today. Real quick, in case people need to go before the end of the meeting, we have our next meeting as June 3rd, and then the meeting after that is, I believe, June 24th. I think that's a Thursday, yes. So we are proposing that meeting actually be in person with some lunch, probably some sort of boxed lunch in the OTO conference room. And so unless anyone knows of any conflicts for kind of lunchtime on the 24th, we'll probably go ahead and adjust that calendar appointment. We will still have a Zoom option, and we'll still broadcast to Facebook and that sort of thing. But we figured when it gets down to actually finalizing all of the project scores, that's probably something best done in person, and it would be a good time to start kind of transitioning and figuring out how we want to make those in-person meetings work. So unless I hear any major conflicts, we'll go ahead and get that appointment adjusted. So then next on the agenda, and Andy, I don't know if you're going to need to share anything, but I'm going to have Andy talk about the multimodal needs preview that we'll be kind of working on this summer. So Andy, I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. No, I don't have anything to share for this. I think as most of you know, MoDOT is going to be gathering up and putting together kind of a multimodal needs list, priority list. This will kind of have air and transit and bike ped, all kinds of different modes in it. And MoDOT will kind of be looking to us for some of the bike ped priorities within our OTO area. They'll be going to the airport to get those aviation kinds of needs. They'll be going to CU Transit and OATS to look at those kinds of needs. But they're going to be looking to us for the bike ped. We have pretty good lists already kind of put together. We have existing trail alignments that we know about in our trail investment study that we can kind of put on that list. I'm sure there are projects in the LRTP that could benefit from an increased focus on bike ped activities. So those kinds of things could be put on our list. We're also going to kind of be working on some data analysis and trying to identify some locations, some projects that might deserve some extra attention, looking at safety, trying to look at contributing circumstances, looking at sidewalk gaps, looking at transit accessibility and Springfield along those MoDOT corridors, and trying to see where things overlap, where good project locations might be. I think we're also going to look at soliciting projects from our communities, from you guys. Are there specific kinds of locations or projects along MoDOT right of way in your communities that you would like to see some additional bike ped kinds of accommodations? And so I think through all of that, we'll have a pretty good list put together. And then when it comes to prioritization, we're kind of just waiting on right now some additional guidance from MoDOT, from Frank. And I know Frank is probably waiting on additional guidance from central office. But once they kind of get a better idea of, are we putting things in tiers? Are we looking at specific rankings? Then we can kind of take a little bit more focus and attention on deciding how we might want to prioritize those, how we might want to put those into tiers, but kind of need to know what target we're looking for before we can develop a good method for that prioritization. So I guess if there were any projects that anybody had in mind right now that came to mind, I could definitely take note of those. We could discuss those a little bit. But I do expect this to be one of the major discussion items at our, let's see, the July BPAC meeting. And then if we have an LRTP meeting after that, I don't remember when our one in July is scheduled for, but we can probably bring that list to you guys and get your feedback on it as well. So Zeke, if you know anything on kind of what central office is saying, you can share that. Otherwise, I understand if you don't have any more guidance on that.
No, we don't at this point.
Okay, so that's a preview of what we've got moving forward, kind of what we're thinking about. I'll try to be sending out some emails to solicit some projects, maybe share some of the projects we've identified and see kind of what each community feels about those. But as I learn more, I will make sure you guys are kept up to speed.
All right, thank you, Andy. Does anyone have any follow-up questions on that before we move on? Okay, I do have a quick question. Someone is in the list as iPhone, and if you're able to, I was just hoping you could maybe let us know who you were so we can get our attendance right.
If I can get you unmuted. It's Chris Boone with Scranford.
Okay, thank you. I thought it was, but just because it was you in the past, it doesn't mean.
I've tried to change that. That it says on my phone that it's Chris's phone or Chris Cochran, and no, I can't figure it out.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. So then next on our list, I want to talk about the financial constraint assumptions, and just gonna get my Excel sheet shared here. So what I've done, and this has been slightly revised probably even since we sent it out just in these first few years, and going through, so our TIP covers 2022 to 2025, the proposed TIP that we'll be approving this summer. So what I've done, and we still may end up with some, I think this will be all right, but we'll be kind of finalizing that, and there may be a slight adjustment or something possibly based on any changes to the draft TIP. But we generally in the past have always incorporated the TIP by reference for those first few years of the long range plan, since those are already set and approved, and so we've got that in there. So that's kind of why I've got that colored slightly different. And then alternating years right here. So for the long range plan requirements, we are supposed to show specific amounts and constraint for each year for the first 10 years. So the TIP already does that for us, and then we'll carry that through 2031. So that's kind of why I've got those alternating. And then after that, we can do time bands. And so I've kind of split it a little bit evenly. So it's 2032 to 2037, and then 2038 to 2045. So those correspond, and you'll definitely be seeing more of this spreadsheet in a little bit as we get into what projects we want to carry forward. But as you can see, I've got the first 4 years of the TIP, and part of this additional funding, so our TIP has a lot of what we call carryover funding because projects were moved forward a year, some different things. And so we have this prior funding built into the tip to be able to constrain that first year. And then after that, this prior year funding is just a matter of whatever's left after what we've put into that particular time band. So I'll get into this a little bit more in a minute, but I just wanted to explain kind of how the time bands work. So as you can see, I've got this laid out so that it's 22 by each year through 2031, and then we have our two grouped time bands at the end. What I have also done is tried to build in the additional funding that we possibly will be seeing from the fuel tax, the 12.5 cents. So the first year we've added in, let's see, we've made some guesstimates based on what MoDOT has shared, and then assuming a 20% rebate, and then OTO share beyond that. And so we don't entirely know, I guess, until the receipts start coming in as to how much we'll be getting exactly. But so we've just kind of estimated that in and built it into the MoDOT forecast, and then carried that forward through until we get to that 12.5 cents. And then after that, everything is just inflated by 1%. So are there any questions on that? Does that seem unreasonable? Okay. So that's our projections. We're actually not too far off. We show a little bit of additional funding compared to what we did for the last plan. So that's always encouraging when you start a process from scratch and you at least end up in line with what you've done before. So then next on the agenda is discussion of life cycle and local priority projects. And I did receive a few emails from some different people helping identify those projects with life cycles. I do not have local priorities for a majority of the community yet. So if anyone on the line today has their priorities set, let me know. We can always get this filled in by next Thursday if we need to. Everything kind of is tied together so that it updates kind of accordingly. So, but to start, we'll start with the life cycle. I did not want this to be something that's considered arbitrary. Try to be purposeful. If there's intersection improvements, signal replacements, if it's a narrow 2-lane asphalt road that we're going to be doing capacity improvements on, I assume that that would end up with a new surface. And so also if there were, you know, bike lane striping, that sort of thing, that usually ends up meaning that something's being resurfaced to be repainted. So I did that. There are a few projects that, you know, I just wasn't entirely sure what the improvement would be to know if we could consider, like, if we're just going to add lanes to existing lanes, then that's not necessarily going to be extending the life cycle of the existing. So I thought I might just kind of go through real quick and see if there was anything that anyone had any comments on. And otherwise, we can always talk about it more offline. But real quick on Campbell, do you see that entire surface being redone or just kind of trying to add beyond what's already there? Dawn or Kirk, I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that.
I don't have any thoughts on that, but I can get some clarification from engineering.
Okay, that'd be great. So then let's see. This Campbell and Farm Road 157, we're really just adding a lane to the shoulder. So I was thinking that one would probably not be necessarily a life cycle extension. We have these Chestnut Expressway projects. So I didn't know, Springfield or MoDOT, if you wanted to, how you wanted to consider those. And then I wasn't sure on these College Street and Commercial Street. If you would see those.
I will get additional information on college and commercial.
Okay,
I don't think that we were the lead on the Chestnut projects.
probably not. Okay, so I'll confirm with MoDOT on those then. I-44. So from what I understand, we're doing a lot of bridge work on this, but we're also, I mean, I would imagine that we'll be replacing road surface and that sort of thing. So unless anyone disagrees, I'm going to give those points for life cycle extension. As well as these interchange projects. So then Kansas Expressway. As far as I know it's going to be kind of a mix of solutions through there. But I didn't know, I know Springfield's kind of been taking the lead, at least on a portion of this. I didn't know if you guys had thoughts on what that would look like.
Again, I don't
Okay.
have anything, but I will get some info.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think a large portion of it, we were looking at going to a 6-lane section.
Okay.
So it'd be
So,
widening. But I
widening
don't,
to-
I don't know that it would, you know, and on the portions that are already concrete, I can't imagine those would be getting, you know, that we would be completely replacing the road surface,
Okay.
but more so just widening.
Okay. Well, I'll double check on where the kind of the changes between concrete and asphalt and what kind of things, and we'll look a little bit closer at that.
Okay.
Kearney, we have listed more as safety and operational improvements. I really wasn't sure what you know, if there'd be like signal replacements with that also, if there you know, we've talked a lot about pedestrian upgrades through Kearney, and so I wasn't sure if there would be some things there to consider.
I would think that would be the same as what the current Glenstone project looks like. Well, yeah, a lot of signal improvements, pedestrian facilities,
Okay.
access management.
Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and do that because I know that'll probably change the face of that corridor. Beginning, I know further out east, that probably would look a little different. So then as far as like Lecompte Road and these intersection improvements, whoops. I didn't know if you guys wanted to give that a score or not.
That would require surface treatment, even if we did widening.
Okay. So then, I believe that this Miller Road project would be the same, and then, let's see what else. So on 160 capacity improvements, I'm not sure that we would be replacing existing road surface through there. I know we've done a lot of work already on the intersections. So I was probably going to say no on those. Let's see. So then, on the 6 lane, and it seems like we are, with all the James River work, it seems like we're just adding on to existing pavement for the most part. So
I
unless
believe
anyone,
that is correct.
so unless anyone thinks differently, I am going to generally give those, let's see. But yeah, feel free to correct any of these, you know, if anyone's got input on what these projects will be doing. So, let's see. And then Garrett, do you have any thoughts on 60 through Republic?
I've got a lot of thoughts on 16
Yeah.
Republic. What
I mean, but
I-
do you think that what work would be done would be including replacing the road surface and or signals?
I think with the safety improvements, what you'd be looking at doing is expanding the roadway. So if we're doing that, then yeah, you'll have to replace the signals and everything.
Let's see. See, and I think these are at M capacity improvements that will, I'll probably be seeing that change that. I was thinking on the MM when it goes from 3 to 5, because we'll have already done the work for the 3 lane. That would probably be just adding to the existing. So ZZ extension would be new roadway. Let's see. Does anyone from Springfield or MoDOT have thoughts on what kind of work might be included with the safety and operational improvements on Sunshine?
I think that was looking like Glenstone and Kearney.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I didn't know how we wanted to consider, because again, I want to make sure that, you know, these points are awarded appropriately. But with this being a new intersection for Seminole, I think it's more adding things than replacing. And then we get into our other projects. So, Dawn, I'll reshare this after the meeting if you don't mind helping follow up. And Zeke, I'll send a copy to you and Frank as well.
Can you go back to the West Bypass and Seminole? What was that one?
It was a new intersection.
I
And it
believe
was signal and turn lane and pedestrian improvements.
that's development driven.
Okay,
We're looking at a break in access right now, or we've requested a break in access right now, but I don't know if that needs to remain on there because it's developer driven.
okay, and it's
But
a
anyway.
developer. Okay, well, yeah, I guess
You
it's
can
on
leave it
the,
on there.
yeah, and we'll just kind of deal with that at
the time.
scoring.
Okay, yes, I will, if you'll send me an updated list and then I will work on the missing information
Okay.
on our projects.
Thank you. And so then on local priority, I do want to just kind of briefly reiterate with, you know, kind of this whole process that we're doing for the plan. You're getting ready. Dave is actually right now working on scoring projects for the next step prioritization process. And I believe short of just the improvements we've made with being able to, you know, better pinpoint where the minority and impoverished populations are, that process will essentially remain unchanged unless there's further discussion at that level. And so some of the things that are kind of new here maybe are carryover from the old plan, but not part of the step prioritization process. And so that includes this local priority. I have heard from Stratford, and I know, Chris, that Martha was pretty sure this is where she wanted her points to go for Stratford, but let me know if for some reason that is changed or you know, just kind of based on what's in the list. But we have North Old Orchard, and then the Western 12500 signalization where 125 goes south. I think that's what came out of our meeting the other day.
Yep, that's my understanding as well.
Okay. So then we also received local priority points from Ozark and Nixa. And so those also include, let's make sure I don't get off the line here. The CC intersection improvements at Main, and then CC from Cheyenne to Maine, and then and improvements from Jackson to Weaver. And I know Ozark was still working on one additional priority to add. And so if anyone else has their priorities ready, we can plug those projects in now. Otherwise, we will want to make sure we have them by next Thursday.
Hey, Natasha,
Yeah.
This is Jeremy. The other one that we identified as a local priority is the expansion of the Jackson Street Bridge.
Okay.
So we've got that one locked in. The highway in is the one that I emailed you about that we're a little iffy on from Jackson to Weaver. But I think the bridge expansion, adding that additional lane, is certainly what we'd look at as a local priority with all that's going on with Finley Farms. So.
Okay. And so I think that is this project. As Dave went through and cleaned up duplicates submitted by different groups, and as we broke out all the different sections, does this look right, Jeremy? Route 14 improvements from NN to 3rd, widen bridge, add westbound right turn lane.
You nailed it.
Okay. So we'll plug that in. Yeah, so again, we'll kind of email out this more kind of ordered list again, and it really should be pretty similar to what you got in your email earlier this week, but we'll go ahead and send that out with this additional scoring information as well. some of the last things I wanted to talk about as far as this spreadsheet goes, as far as cost year, we are, you know, we don't necessarily have that for everything, especially maybe some of the more projects that either came out from the STIP priority list or public input, or just how some of the projects got broke up. So if we can get some help answering some of those questions, and maybe we can do that as we decide where in the constrained list, you know, and maybe that'll adjust a little bit depending on how projects get selected. Then the other thing, and it might be easier to show from this page, so you can kind of see where, you know, we've got a few gaps in this construction year, but in the cost, and this is something that as we're moving projects over to be funded, Dave copied over the entire project cost to each segment. And so honestly, all of these projects should add up to 750,000 as opposed to being 750,000 individually. So Zeke, on a number of these, I may be hoping to work with you and Frank on deciding what you know, those individual costs should be, or you know, how we want to estimate that. And then, for example, like on Kansas, we had just had a phase 1, 2, and 3, and that initially had been for the entire segment, and now that's been broken up into pieces, but we'll still need to kind of decide maybe where in the process should that move over to the constraint list. So those might be some things we can decide as we move things to the constrained list. So are there any other general questions on the project scoring? One more thing I wanted to throw out in relation to local priority, and I'll admit it didn't initially, I guess I didn't really think that far through it, but city utilities had asked if they could also have a local priority projects to score. And I think initially we'd just been thinking, you know, each jurisdiction would get 2, but I wanted to throw that out there and see if anyone would have any issues with that. They wanted to pick projects that would have be most beneficial for their transit routes. So that would be their perspective on that.
No issues here.
Okay. So unless I hear something, you know, or more collectively, we will plug those in for you, Brandy. They were looking at Glenstone and a Division Street project. So we will add those points as well. Okay, so just moving forward to the constrained list then. I want to kind of talk about what we've taken off the top, so to speak. So we have, and in the last plan, we didn't have it on the constrained project list. We just kind of had a lump sum over to the side and then took it all out, and then had our ranked list. And so because we're having to show these individual years, we're going ahead and listing them out as individual programs and then funded by year. Again, we have the first 4 years of the TIP, and so I have included, and again, this number will adjust as we're finalizing the draft TIP. I think there's some minor project changes that we're seeing, but I'm basically plugging in what that summary amount is from the TIP for those 4 years. And so that's why you kind of see that there. And those projects will incorporate probably as an appendix listing. And so they'll just kind of automatically be rolled into this plan. So then the other categories, we have our ADA, bike, ped, trail investments. And that's kind of, you know, all those sidewalk projects and curb ramp projects, and then, you know, whatever we end up funding with, you know, for trails or enhancements and that sort of thing in the area. So that'll be that category. The signal replacement program, it's area wide. It's not necessarily something that's year over year, but we go ahead and have the amount that Frank had submitted for that. The bridge asset management program, safety improvement, interstate and major routes, minor routes, pavement, intersection operational improvement program, ITS. Those are all part of kind of what MoDOT programs in the STIP, generally speaking. And then that's also based on their asset management program and their safety improvement plan. And so those are calculated from that. The ITS operations and maintenance, that is higher than what you might normally see in the TIP, but it also includes the asset management side of, you know, it's not just TMC operations and salaries year after year. So it includes additional things beyond that. And in 26, Frank said that there was a large project there. And so that's why that number is just a little bit higher. So then scoping, I really wasn't sure exactly what number we wanted to give this. In the last plan, we just kind of gave it a lump sum of, yeah, I think I don't even think we had a full million in there. So it's just kind of an average number that grows over the years. So if anyone has any thoughts on that, you know, I think when we do our planning studies, sometimes those go beyond that, but then when you average them out, you know, we don't do those every year. Rail, normally that does get programmed into the TIP. And so then, you know, just looking at, we usually have 1 or 2 crossings a year that end up getting improved. So that kind of takes that into account. So are there any questions on kind of this money coming off the top? I don't really see a way that we don't include it. Oh, and I'll also say this operations and maintenance for the state and local system, that's what we are required to show in the TIP every year, where we take the miles of the federal aid system times whatever the budget is for what the communities, you know, put on that. And so I basically, you know, started with what we show for the last year in the TIP and then just started inflating it out from there. But we can always adjust how things are shown or what we're doing with that information. But I don't see a way that we don't include any of these things. Okay, so that then takes us into what will be our process for actually moving projects into the constrained project list. I've copied over basically, and it's kind of in the same, so as long as I don't resort this list, we're fine over here. So nothing's in score order, especially because at this point we have not finalized what those scores are. But I do just want to give a highlight of you know, what projects scored over 70, you know, 70 points or more. So 140 points are possible with our prioritization. I think that Kearney Street one might be our highest. Yes. So let's see. So our highest scoring at this point in time is Kearney Street from Kansas to Glenstone. And so just for example, I'll just show you how how I have the spreadsheet set up. So as we go through and we decide what projects we want to move forward, I would put a C in that column for a constrained list. And then it calculates out according to what year it's set to be in, and it'll go ahead and start filling in the table and subtracting it out of the amount of funding available. So I don't know, are there any projects that anyone wants to, without a doubt say we should move forward, even before we kind of finalize the last bit of scoring? There's definitely some that are kind of in that highest realm of scores available already. Or any other questions about the process in general?
Hey, Natasha, can you go over again what the constrained list is going to, what is the purpose of the constrained list?
Oh, sure. So our plan basically, we estimate how much funding we have available through 2045. And then we're required to develop a list of projects that we can afford through 2045. Mm-hmm. And so we've submitted, all the needs we can think of. And we have, at this point with these other projects that we've already taken out, we have about $700 million left to select projects from. And the caveat is most of our projects we have, we have a cost for 2022. So if we start saying that a project, won't be done until 2045, it will be inflated, 3% over all those years. And so the cost can really get, so you can't necessarily just add all these up and say, oh, they equal $700 million. So what that ends up meaning is there's projects that we can't afford. And so those go on what you call the unconstrained list. So as far as the process goes, in order for projects to be in the TIP or STIP, they have to be on our plan's constrained list. And so that's why you'll see us occasionally changing the plan list, like when Grant Avenue received all that discretionary money through the build program, we amended the long range plan to include that on the constrained list. We had a new identified funding source, so we were able to do that. So if a project does not make it on the constrained project list, it cannot get moved into the TIP later without additional action.
Okay.
So I don't, I'll take the group's lead on this, but, if you wanted to start going ahead and suggesting any projects to kind of start programming or prioritizing onto the constraint list, or wait until we get kind of the last few scores plugged in.
I propose we wait until we get all of the scores plugged in and then go from there.
Okay. So I really just, I wanted to be able to give, a more descriptive purpose of how we're going to go through the process and how things will land once we actually start moving them to the constrained list.
And will that be the bulk of the meeting next week?
Yes.
Okay.
And then on the 24th, we will, kind of sit down and hammer out the last details. So I could be wrong, but I don't imagine that we'll feel confident and ready to say that is the list by the end of next week. I imagine there'll be a lot of discussion, which is good. We want to have that. So, okay. Well, in the meantime, then we will work on finalizing construction year in dollars, and then thanks for those who will finish helping with the life cycle scores, and then if we can get local priority scores, then we'll just be ready to hit the ground running next week. So are there any questions about the process, the numbers, the more categorical projects, anything with the process that we can help solve before next week? Okay. Well, silence I'm going to take as a good sign. Thank you, everyone. And I got a thumbs up from Jeremy. All right. I think that is all I had on the agenda then for today. I will be sure and send this out as soon as we hang up here, and I guess just let me know if you have any questions that pop in your head between now and next week. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Dawn, in the chat. And I think we had a comment earlier from Zeke about his microphone working, but we did all hear you, Zeke. So thank you for that. And I guess that's all. So unless anyone has anything else, we will see you next week.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks.